Today I wanted to talk about the 5 records that sort of exemplify my collection. The 5 records that are sort of the roadmap of my musical experience, if you will. This is a response to a video put out by a brand new channel that I'd like to talk about as well. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome to Northern Revolutions. I'm Rob. Welcome back if you're returning. Welcome if you're new. As I mentioned, there is a new channel in the vinyl community, the wonderfully entertaining Richard S. Richard has been a longtime viewer of the videos that I've made, a almost religious viewer of our weekly live stream that we do on Wednesday nights, always a contributor in the comments. Thrilled to say that Richard has now jumped into the pool, shall we say, and is making vinyl community videos. So please check out Richard S. He's got a couple videos, and I was thankful enough that he joined us this past week on the live stream, along with Daryl and Joe and myself. And we had a fun discussion about, the songs that we always like to skip. So please check out Richard. He's a very entertaining man, and I think he's going to have a great channel for everyone to enjoy. Having said that, Richard started his second video, which he sort of called Take 5. And the theme of his first Take 5 is the 5 records that sort of exemplify your collection, or the 5 records that sort of define your musical taste, or however you want to frame that, I guess. And so absolutely, I thought I'd make a response to that. Not only to get the word out about Richard's channel, but it's always fun. I enjoy talking about why we connect with music, which is just as important as the music. I did something similar to this almost 3 years ago when I started making these. I think I called it my record journey, but it's been almost 3 years, so let's revisit it. I don't think any of these records are ones I haven't shown before, so it's not like it's anything earth-shattering, but I like the thread of continuity, shall we say, that this topic provides. So the first record that, kind of typifies what my collection is Beatlemania with the Beatles. This is the first Beatles record issued in North America, actually. It was only released in Canada. It is a direct copy of the British with the Beatles from the same tapes. We just titled it a little differently and put some blurbs on it, but that's what this is. And this is the record one of the records that started it all for me. This is an original first press, and it's actually my dad's copy. His name's on there. I got into the Beatles, and I've told the story before, early 90s. I got into music in the early 90s. I'd started listening to some Elvis, just because oldies radio was what was playing in our house most mornings, getting ready for school. But right around the time, I guess, that the anthologies came out in, I think, 94 or something like that, just prior to that is when I started getting into the Beatles. And I remember the first time Dad played Abbey Road for me, and it blew my mind. But I remember sort of the first one that I always went to when I went go put on a Beatles record is this exact copy of With the Beatles, because I loved that early stuff at the time. I didn't quite appreciate what their later stuff was, but this had some great, Please Mr. Postman is still one of my absolute favorite Beatles songs, and it's a cover. But All My Lovin', Roll Over Beethoven, It Won't Be Long. The only song I'm not a big fan of actually is Till There Was You. But I loved the feel of this album. I thought it was just, I liked that early Beatlemania kind of stuff. So I played this record a lot. And honestly, this was the record that, I learned how to use a record player properly. I learned how to clean the record. I learned how to put the needle down, all that kind of stuff. 12-year-old, 14-year-old me, whatever I was, learned how to use a record player. And this was the one that started it all, the one that I played a lot. And I'm obviously a massive Beatles fan. I have hundreds of Beatles records, but this is where it started. And through that, I started listening to a lot of stuff in Dad's record collection, some Fleetwood Mac and some Creedence and, Guess Who, all that kind of 70s rock But really, the next landmark album, this is no surprise because I've talked about this a million times, is Oasis, What's the Story, Morning Glory. This was the next big album that just hit me. Might be the most important record in my life. I think it's a brilliant album. I know a lot of people hate Oasis, and that's fine. But this was kind of the first one that I discovered on my own. I think this came out in 95. I discovered this on my own. This wasn't because someone else was listening to it. I watched a lot of Much Music. I remember Wonderwall. I know Wonderwall is kind of a shitty song, but it was kind of, what's this Oasis thing? And so I started listening to this. And this album, that summer of 95, really became the soundtrack of my life. There is not a memory in that time period that doesn't involve this album. And every time I put on this album, it takes me back. You can almost hear it and smell it and feel it, and it feels like you're there. So I mean, this is like my DeLorean, if you will. A lot of significant events in my life are tied to this album, and this kind of my, as corny as it sounds, kind of my coming of age album. This album is monumentally important in the soundtrack of my life. In those early days, at the same time as I was getting into Oasis, I was dating a girl that I dated all through high school, and she was a big fan of U2. And U2 is another band that means a lot to me. A lot is an understatement. But the next big album, and to me it was a big album around the same time as What's the Story, Morning Glory, though it had come out a few years before, was Achtung Baby. As I was enthralled with the Beatles and obsessed with Oasis, my girlfriend at the time was introducing me to U2. And I remember she made me a mixtape of her favorite U2 songs. And I think the first U2 CD I bought was Achtung Baby on her suggestion. Man, this is such a good album. I don't think there's a bad song on here. Mysterious Ways is just incredible. I love the song Trying to Throw Your Arms Around the World, even better than The Real Thing. One is just maybe the best song Lee ever wrote. Who's Gonna Ride Your Wild Horses? This made me fall in love with U2. Not my favorite U2 record. I really love Joshua Tree. I like Rattle and Hum even more. But this was my gateway into U2, a band that I still love to this day, a band that my best friend and I share a passion for and have seen together live. This just opened up a world of music for me, this incredible album, Achtung Baby. Round about 2000, I was in university, and I remember repeatedly seeing on Much Music the video for a song called Somebody Waits by a band called Blue Rodeo, who I was aware of because they were kind of a big deal in Canada, but I was really not familiar with anything that they had done, or I thought anyway. And so the song Somebody Waits was on their album, The Days in Between, which I bought on CD because of that one song. And I fell in love with this record. And then I fell in love with this band. To the point that since 2000, I have seen this band live 51 times. Not counting some of their side projects, but as Blue Rodeo, I've seen them 51 times. I've met everyone in the band. I am really good friends with one guy in the band, and I know a couple of the others. This band is beyond words how important this band is to me. And this album is my favorite. It is probably the most forgotten in their discography. The band hates it for some reason. It's not quite their country rock that they are known for. This is more like grandpa rock, as I like to call it. It's Blue Rodeo without much pedal steel. It's more just electric guitars, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. Impossible to find on vinyl, by the way. But this started my love affair with this band. I mean, the Beatles are huge. These guys are just as huge for me, but the Beatles are, gods. These are real people. I've met them. I've talked to them. I've been in one of their houses and sat on his front porch and we had coffee. Like this band is everything to me. And again, it's part of the soundtrack of my life. So this was the album that really got me hooked on Blue Rodeo. It's called The Days in Between. And my fifth album, and this is sort of tangential to Blue Rodeo. This is an artist I got to be familiar with because they're in, we'll call it Blue Rodeo's sphere of influence, if you will. This is a guy named Luke Doucette, and he's a guitar player. He was in a Vancouver-based punk band called Veal. He has been Sarah McLachlan's guitar player for 20 years. This is his solo record from 2008. And I had heard of Luke because he's friends with the guys in Blue Rodeo and he's opened for them before. And I don't remember precisely why I picked this album up. It's called Blood's Too Rich. Luke Doucette and the White Falcon. That's what he calls his band, I guess, if you will, on this. But he's really a solo artist. The album's called Blood's Too Rich. And I picked this up and immediately fell in love with it. I've said before, Luke Doucette is the greatest guitar player in Canada today, I think. He's known for playing a Gretsch White Falcon, hence the name. And he's a very, very distinct guitar tone. When it's him playing, you know it's him playing. And there are some incredible songs on here. Why this album is important? Luke is one of my favorite guitar players. And being a wannabe guitar player myself, this is important. But this did a couple things. I mean, fell in love with Luke's music, but also he would later team up with his wife, Melissa McClelland, and form a band called White Horse. This is White Horse. This is their debut. I've seen White Horse a bunch of times. I've met Luke and Melissa a bunch of times. This band is a very favorite band of mine. So this is important because this, I followed him down the path when he became White Horse with his wife. But also, this really opened my eyes to the broader community of Canadian musicians, contemporary Canadian musicians that are out there. Yes, Blue Rodeo is a Canadian band, but they're at the top of the mountain in terms of Canadian music these days. Them and the Tragically Hip, they're in the Hall of Fame. They're the big time, as big as the big time is in Canada. But there is a plethora of people that maybe you haven't heard of. Canadians haven't even heard of unless you're into the Canadian music scene. I wasn't really aware that there was a Canadian independent music scene, but this is the album that got me there, and it is my passion. I have more independent Canadian music on those shelves than I probably do music you've heard. So this is very important, not only because I love this album, it made me fall in love with White Horse, but also discovered my passion for independent Canadian music. There you go, Richard. That's my take 5. Those are a progression of 5 albums that sort of charts my musical discovery, if you will. Hope you found that interesting. Please, folks, check out Richard S. He's a wonderful guy, and I think he's entertaining as hell. Please watch our live stream from last Wednesday. It's up on my channel. Show him some love. Check out the videos he's got up there. Subscribe. I think he's going to be a great addition to the vinyl community. So let me know in the comments, what are 5 albums that shaped your musical tastes or are sort of, milestones along your musical journey. Let me know. Be interested to hear. That's everything for me today, everybody. Catch you on the flip side. Bye.